Hi everyone, Alexandra Jowett, Jupiter returns here with your weekly astrology forecast for the week of the 9th to the 15th of November 2020. And I hope you're all well. We enter the week with, we're really deeply now into the waning phase of the current moon cycle. We had over the weekend, we had the last quarter square aspect between the moon in the fixed sign of Leo and sun in the fixed sign of Scorpio. They're just passing the astrological point of Samain, that midpoint of autumn, as autumn now starts to prepare to move into winter. So a fixed cycle that we're in. That last quarter square phase really is all about the kind of, we've had the chance with that square to consider what came up back here at the full moon that we had in Taurus that was conjunct Uranus. What came up at that time? It may have been something, with it being a fixed sign like this, it may have been something that took you by surprise, that came up to the surface that perhaps you hadn't seen before. With the sun over there in Scorpio and the moon down here in Taurus, as it was, you know, again, this is fixed signs. So this could be something that there's been a resistance to, perhaps. And Uranus's involvement there saying, okay, something that's been a bit buried, that's now come up to the surface and it's ready really to be integrated. The aspects of that were useful and supportive and nurturing in some way can now be integrated and the rest left behind. So when the moon now gets to the quarter phase, as she did yesterday, that was Sunday, the 8th of November, then it's really about that, okay, this is the point now. This is the challenge where we choose something now really does need to be left behind. As we prepare, as we go through this week, approaching the new moon, which I'll talk to you about shortly, this now we're really into the deep release work. This is the case of, all right, we've had chance to take stock and now it's time to let go. We've decided what we want to hang on to from that culmination point back here. And now we're deciding that there's certain things that really we'd like to go so that we can create a new start. And it's a really exciting new start that we have coming up as well. This is, you know, the new moon that we're moving into at the end of the week is the last new moon pre-eclipse new moon, because we're moving back into eclipse season. So this is the last new moon that we've got with Jupiter and Saturn in Capricorn. All right, so these two planets will be moving out of Capricorn at the winter solstice. So, you know, those of you who know me and work with me with Moondala readings, etc., you'll know that I'm not an advocate for the eclipses being opportunities for us to have quite as much influence as we do in the ordinary lunations, new moons and full moons, etc. So, you know, this really is kind of the last opportunity as we're still working with these powerful players up there in Capricorn. So as we move through the week, you know, that's really what we need to be doing. So today then, Monday the 9th, we have the moon now in Virgo. So one of the expressions that I really enjoyed over the weekend of the moon moving through Leo was all those funny memes that were coming out there, the sense of humor around the whole situation that we found going on over in the States. You know, some of the memes that were floating about were absolute comedy gold, really, weren't they? And Leo does give us that sense of, oh, come on, you know, let's not take everything so seriously. Let's have a bit of a laugh and have a laugh at our own expense as well, as to how easily caught up in it all we get. You know, we are humans after all. But with the moon now moving into Virgo today, things take a little bit more of a critical kind of emphasis. You know, moon in Virgo can make us quite picky and quite looking for fault almost, you know. The MO essentially of Virgo is to improve things, is to make things better, heal them in some way. But often the Virgo energy gets kind of stuck in diagnosing what needs to be healed. a nicer way of finding fault. So there can be quite a critical nature to our emotional expression today. So watch out for that one. But yeah, this is a time of release. So where is Virgo in your chart? Perhaps this is an area that you can identify that there's some criticism, that perhaps you get stuck at that point of working with the Virgo energy and you don't see it through to the stages of, oh, okay, well, if I've seen something that could be improved in some way, how do I now move that on? And as always, as I've said kind of all year, really, with Mars in retrograde in Aries, this is about, focusing, bringing the focus back to the self. All right. It's so easy to get caught up in what everyone else should do and how wrong everyone else is and where the fault is with other people. It's always got to, use that as a cue, almost as a reminder. Oh, okay, what about me? What does this say about me? Where are the areas for improvement that I can make in my life? Because really, that's the only true influence that we have, is leading by example, really, doing our own work, owning our own selves fully, in all of those aspects, moving out of the egoic need to be right and into, being able to accept, oh, okay, maybe that's something that I could change or improve in some way. So yeah, a critical sort of slant on things. Really, the peak aspect of today then is this Venus Mars opposition. Really strong. And the reason it's strong is because it's exact today. We've been building into this for a little while now, but both of these planets are in their home signs, they're domiciled, so they have a lot of dignity, so they have a lot of strength, essentially. So Venus is in her home sign of Libra, and Mars is in his home sign of Aries, so they're both equally as powerful as each other. With Venus representing our values, the things that we think are important, things that we might make an investment into, whether that be an investment of our time or our effort or simply our energy, just something that we align with, something that we connect with from the heart, okay? And Mars is, he's the warrior. He's the quite defensive, quite impulsive, quite rash, so we're seeing this as an opposition would present a major polarity in people's values, what they value, what they think is right, what they think is how we should conduct ourselves, how we should connect to the process of life and to each other. And that's coming in under attack. Anything that is different from our value system is being attacked, even to the point of, I've noticed this morning on my own timeline, women being attacked. I'm thinking specifically of Kamala Harris, this historical moment where the first female vice president, I mean, she's not even in office yet, but, already being attacked and brought down, an excuse for sort of the backdrop of what's going on up here, which I'll talk about, being an excuse just to attack this woman. So yeah, there's this great polarity that I'm sure we're all experiencing to some degree or another. And again, it's a moment to come back to the self and say, okay, how does the way that I act, which is Mars, how is the way that I express my inner warrior, my courage, my passion, my drive, my enthusiasm, all of these Martian impulses, how am I putting those out there in terms of how I connect with other people? Venus is all about connection. And how do they speak from my own personal value system, my own heart? Essentially, is that a fair representation of what's in my heart? And I suspect that a lot of what's going on really isn't, because when we get back to the heart of who we are, of people, a lot of these kind of transient and superficial aspects that are swirling around us at the moment are actually fundamentally irrelevant. And there's so much commonality on both sides. Everyone just wants things to be better. Everyone wants to see an improvement in their lives. Everyone wants to feel like they matter as well. You know, Venus needs to be admired. She's receptive energy. She needs to, what is beauty if it cannot be acknowledged by anyone? What's the point in that? What's the point in harmony and justice and peace and fairness and balance and all of these things that she stands for if there's nothing to receive that, if there's nothing to connect up with that? So and with Mercury alongside as well, you know, this is you know, the hot topic of conversation really is the differences, but let's try and focus on actually what's behind all of that. And that's going to be really facilitated by two things. Essentially, we've got the Sun over there in Scorpio making a really nice connection to Neptune. Haven't talked a whole lot about Neptune in recent times because he's not really been in the spotlight, but he's going to be becoming increasingly influential from now onwards, essentially, because he's going to be making, and it's currently building up. It's quite a slow process, but it is currently building up. And we've got Neptune in square aspect to our fated karmic points, the North node, North lunar node, and the South lunar node. We're moving back into eclipse territory, taking place in Gemini and Sagittarius. So this is going to be pulling us into the Neptune vibe. So today, with this trine aspect going on from the Sun to Neptune, that really helps us to see how we are actually all fundamentally the same. When we get rid of all the survival strategies that we get caught up in our day-to-day life of, you know, I can survive better if this person is doing worse than me, or, you know, it's that competitive, I've got to be the winner kind of nature with Mars so often. It's like, you know, I do better if other people do worse, kind of, and it's very much lower expression, and we have seen a lot of that lately. But with Neptune understands that fundamentally the core spirit of us all, you know, we're all connected to each other. And so when other people are lifted, when other people are happy and healthy and thriving, then it helps us and vice versa. We're all connected to each other. And Neptune carries the fundamental energy of compassion and forgiveness. So hopefully with the Sun highlighting Neptune today, it's going to help to offset some of this polarity and enable us really to come back to what's at the heart of all people, which is that we just want to be able to get on with our lives and have health and security and freedom, love, all of these same principles that the human nature is trying to gain. So hopefully we can tap into that. That actually perfects on Tuesday the 10th. So we're building into that energy today, and it will peak tomorrow. Also tomorrow, then Tuesday the 10th, we have Mercury completing the journey through Libra, okay, which has been stimulating the social scene. Libra is an air sign, excuse me. Libra is an air sign. It's very sociable. It's very mental in orientation. So there can be a certain amount of detachment or emotional detachment, essentially, within that. And there can be a superficiality almost. And that's in complete contrast to when Mercury then moves into Scorpio. So don't forget, Mercury is still in shadow, all right? So Mercury is retracing its steps now to complete the 3 stages of the Mercury retrograde phase. So Mercury is now recovering. So this is the post-retrograde shadow. So Mercury is now recovering steps that he's already taken between the 22nd of September and the 16th of October. Those are the steps that he's now going over. So he's re-going over that part of your chart and saying, okay, let's put things straight again. In Libra, Mercury was weighing things up, looking at things from both sides and saying, oh, okay, let me just have a think about this in a nicely objective way. Because of that level of emotional detachment, with it being an air sign, it can make a more head-led, weighing up of the situation, of any situation that we find ourselves in, essentially, during this transit, and whatever planets and angles and houses are involved in your own chart there. So Mercury completing that time and now going back into Scorpio and saying, let's get deep. All right, Mercury in Scorpio is literally forensic. It's like, I'm leaving no stone unturned. I am going to get into the roots of what's been going on. I will stop at nothing. And this is fine-toothed comb territory, if ever there was it. If you ever wanted the great, a wonderful researcher or analyst, or like an investigator of some kind, Mercury in Scorpio will do wonders in that area of life. And so our attention, our mental cognitive processes are drawn into the deepest realms of ourself, the things that remain hidden from us as well. So this is helping us to unpick where we're in a situation where perhaps there isn't balance and harmony, where there isn't as much equality and fairness, that those weighing scales of Libra are all about fairness and balance. So this is saying, okay, what's underlying where there may not be enough fairness and balance and harmony in my life? Okay, where's that coming from? Let's really get into the heart of it and find it out, which is fantastic if we can align with this energy. So yeah, recovering that part of the chart whilst he's still in retrograde, not leaving shadow, post-retrograde shadow, until November the 20th. So there's still a little way to go with that particular transit. And it's the same with Mars also. Mars is currently retrograde and will also be going direct as we move through the week. In fact, that's going to be taking place on Friday, so I'll talk about it then. So where does this leave us then? I'm just going to take these ones off and draw our attention back to Capricorn, because this is where all of the action has been all year, essentially. So what we have that we're building into between Wednesday and Friday, so Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the energy is really, really building up throughout these days, really pulling us into quite a peak moment in time, probably one of the peak moments of the entire year, essentially. So this is with the conjunction, the third and final conjunction of Jupiter and Pluto. So again, this has been very noticeably building up in the background, the mood music to everything, that's just kind of constantly on in the background, getting slightly louder and louder, and now really at a crescendo. Pluto, as the ruler of Scorpio, is all about transformation. It's all about breaking something apart, inspecting everything into all the fine details, and then saying something here needs to be removed. Something needs to be left behind so that there can be a complete transformation in a new way. All the pieces can be put back together in a different way. It's death and rebirth territory. It's often carries a powerful influence of the secret, the hidden, with Scorpio stuff, in hard aspect, in challenging kind of influence like it has been. It speaks to things that are a manipulation of power, an abuse, of power, wrongdoings of the worst kind, essentially, a real darkness and evilness, even, you could go so far as to saying. And so with Jupiter, okay, and it's also death, you know, it's also, you know, the worst things that can happen, essentially, to the human being in order to provoke a complete transformation. Alongside Jupiter, Jupiter having this expansive quality. Jupiter basically, they say it just magnifies whatever it touches in the chart. So there's a magnification of this vibration going on. And Jupiter represents, let's say, again, in a hard aspect, in an aspect that's more likely to produce not so wise expressions. Jupiter can be a know-it-all. All right, Jupiter can sometimes need to wind its neck in a bit, because Jupiter is all about this idea that I am in some way superior. All right, I'm up there on high looking down on others. And so much of the arguments that I hear in the polarity is, you know, the only reason your argument isn't valid is because you're probably too stupid to know what I know. On both sides of the argument, I see a lot of this. You know, I have greater knowledge, Jupiter. You know, I'm a know-it-all, and I can see what's been hidden. You know, that the Pluto, this has been hidden from view, and obviously, you know, you must be stupid if you can't see that. And there's such a lot of that going on, as I say, on both sides of the arguments. It's also the increase and like another moment where the crisis itself of Pluto, that Pluto is bringing about, is spreading. You know, again, we're back in this territory of surging numbers of infections with the coronavirus, as an example. You know, and the effects of that, the effects of, you know, what's been put in place to tackle the situation are, again, very difficult, very damaging. It's a total crisis for so many people in very many ways. And so there's a lot of darkness, there's a lot of fear, and again, that is being exacerbated by people's beliefs. Jupiter really does represent our beliefs. But you see, Jupiter being the ruler of Sagittarius, and therefore the ruler of the South Node, South Lunar Node at the moment, it kind of speaks to, we really need to integrate the good parts, the desirable parts of Sagittarius, and it's time to really release the less desirable aspects of Sagittarius. Those aspects can be global, so globalization being reduced, the international travel is being reduced, bringing things back to the local area, which is Gemini. We have North Node of Destiny in Gemini. This is obviously where the eclipses are going to be. North Node in Gemini is saying a little bit more of, we need to focus more on our immediate neighborhood, more on the people that are actually involved in our day-to-day lives, and not the, the wider, bigger kind of world that's out there. We need to integrate what we've learned from having that period of time of, you know, real growth in global communication and interconnectedness. But also, you know, the work, how do we integrate what we have learned about our own belief systems and where they come from, particularly with Mercury moving into Scorpio, what's behind that? Because the thing about Sagittarius and Jupiter energy is it's very broad brushstrokes. It's very undetailed. There's not much detail. The detail comes in with Gemini, all right? This is the instruction manual, right? Sagittarius is the enthusiasm to make something happen, all right? And but how does that work? Well, it can only work if there's some detail. There has to be an instruction book. And, you know, this is the, well, what does that look like? You know, how does that work? Why would that be? And so we're trying to find the balance here between these broad brushstrokes. And let's face it, you know, elections are being fought and won on slogans. This is sloganism. This is just like these throwaway big, broad brushstroke kind of stereotypes, all this really like everything being lumped in together kind of situation. Whereas with Gemini, it's more about the refinement, the detail, the precision. And I think so. This is real part of that. This is saying, you know, when these two come together, it's saying, look, what about this needs to now be really transformed? And of course, it's showing up in Capricorn, which is the, you know, the structure of our society, the fabric of our society, our authorities, the institutions that we're part of. And so we're seeing that degrading and breaking apart. And the hope is that so that something better can come, that there's an opportunity always with Jupiter. Always an opportunity. And this pairing always leads me back to that, you know, that expression of, or the interpretation that the Chinese have of crisis, which is, you know, yes, there is the crisis, Pluto, but it's also an opportunity, which is the Jupiter aspect. So these guys are coming together for the third and final time for another 13 years. And this is, let's see, it's reactivating. They're coming together at 22 degrees of Capricorn. And for those keen astrology fans, you will know that this is the degree that we had the grand conjunction of Saturn and Pluto. And Saturn was back here. This is the exact same degree. So it's reactivating that point. And that's why I think it's going to be a really, really pivotal, momentous point for all of 2020's kind of astrology. So yeah, that was taking place on January the 12th, the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn, back in on January the 12th, and that really was what triggered everything that we're now living through, essentially. So if you're looking at this from a personal point of view, which I very much recommend that you do then, the first, so the direct conjunction between Jupiter and Pluto, that was right at the beginning of April, April the 4th. And then with the retrograde, it was June the 30th. So this was, you know, essentially when we all had to go within and really decipher, really pick apart, having had the experiences of seeing Jupiter and Pluto come together at the beginning of April, and when we saw that real surge in this debate around what was underlying the crisis, you know, that we found ourselves in. Was it 5G? Was it, you know, leaked from a Chinese laboratory? Was it done on purpose? Is it just a complete lie? Is it Bill Gates trying to kill off everyone? You know, all of this stuff, that was when we saw the surge, the first surge of these ideas. And that was, yes, that was the beginning of April. Then June the 30th, it was the retrograde. It was a pulling back and saying, okay, let's go back over this because something ain't right. Something's off and this needs readdressing. And on a personal level, hopefully you engaged with that process. Now they're moving forward again and they're coming together again. And it's like, okay, so where are we at with this now? Are we moving forward in a slightly different way than perhaps we were back in April, where maybe we've just humbled ourselves just a little bit and said, maybe I don't know everything. And maybe other people, just because they have a different point of view, aren't completely wrong and completely stupid, you know, and maybe if we can see and focus on where we all agree, that we can build on that stuff rather than adding fuel to the fire of division. And I'm just as guilty as everyone else. But the thing about Jupiter is to be in the wise observer perspective, that higher perspective that he has, to be able to look down allows us to observe our own behaviors and our own actions as well. And coming together with Pluto then gives us that opportunity to, you know, change where we've identified that we perhaps might need to in some way, and how that's going to benefit you know, the whole structure when we each do our individual work. With Saturn there, it's all about taking responsibility, taking ownership for mastering ourselves and really having integrity Am I conducting myself with integrity? If I look back on my actions today from 20 years time, which is what Jupiter's very much about the future and the horizon, you know, and Saturn's very much about the past and the legacy that we leave. So the legacy of 2020, what footprint has that left? Like, we have these footprints with our credit scores, don't we? They talk of leaving a footprint on our credit score. Well, what about on our karmic kind of page? What footprints are we leaving there? What legacy have we left, you know, in 2020? Will we look back on ourselves and say, yeah, we acted with integrity, core integrity to the values that are really in our hearts and not our egos? And it's a constant process through life. You know, no one gets this completely right, because you wouldn't need to be a human being. If you could get that completely right, you would have ascended. So the fact that we're all here means that we all definitely have this thing in common, that we all definitely are still working on ourselves. So there's a commonality to focus on. So the other thing then that's happening on Friday is the station of Mars. So a really, really, really potent time. With this going on at the same time, as I mentioned before, when a planet stations either to go direct or retrograde, the influence that it has is exaggerated, it's amplified. And Mars is going to occupy this 15th degree of Aries for, I think it's almost 2 weeks. It's a really, really extended period of time, slowed right down. And it's stationing to go direct there at 15 degrees of Aries. So again, I would caution against, you know, saying, whoa, Mars is direct, everything is all over. You know, it's not, because it takes a while for the planet to pick up speed and start gaining some momentum to move things forward again. So don't expect that all those frustrations and everything that where you felt held back is now suddenly going to fall into place and you're going to be steamrolling ahead in that area of your life. That's not going to be happening, because it's going to take a little while for Mars to gather some pace, firstly. And secondly, this when it stations direct, all that's saying is it's now completed it's completed the second of 3 aspects of the whole of the transit. Okay, so it's still in shadow. He's still going to be in shadow. And he doesn't actually leave shadow, 28 degrees of Aries, until into January. All right, this is a really, really long process. And this third part of the process is really, really important. And trust me when I say the Mars retrograde story is far from over, just because it goes direct. So don't get pulled into, you know, if you see memes and things, whoa, Mars is direct, just don't get pulled into that. There's a lot of the story left to come with that. As it moves forward, we've got more square aspects to these guys to come. So yeah, we're still working, we're still recrafting our sense of courage. We're still having another look at masculinity, how we use the masculinity within ourselves, how masculinity is used within society, the proportions of it. And we're really sort of being asked to reconsider what it looks like to be a true warrior in the 21st century. And as Mars moves forward, then we're going to have these few days of real intense Martian energy, frustration, aggression, violence, anger, all of the downsides. So really be careful towards the end of the week around fast things, around fire, around anything sharp, be that a knife or a tongue. They can both cause us just as much damage in my experience. Just be wary of those things, because there's going to be a lot of impulsive behavior going on with Mars stationing like it is, and with the backdrop of these guys coming together, then that could be not too pleasant, really. one of the aspects, I mean, you know, Jupiter coming together with Pluto is like an increased need to control, an increased need to manipulate, an increased need to have influence over someone, to bend them to what your will is. You know, Pluto is essentially Mars on steroids. Essentially, it's the higher octave of Mars. So it's like, you know, what Mars wants right now, Pluto stops at nothing to get it, really. It's that absolute focus, determination that's unshakable. So yeah, this is some of the energies that we're going to be really experiencing quite profoundly as we move into Thursday and Friday in particular. So it's Friday, and it's Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th, we have that Mars station. On a more lighter note, though, and this is really interesting, at the same time, we will have Venus over there in Libra trining the North Node there in Gemini. So really, really pouring in very, very easily an influence of love, an influence of heart, of kindness, of balance, of love into, you know, where we're headed, into our destiny. And don't forget, these nodes are going to be a big feature, the main feature essentially of the eclipses we're moving into. That means that we also therefore have a sextile to the South Node. So this is basically saying Venus is going to help us to pull out the better sides of Sagittarius, which is the hope, the optimism, the opportunity to become wiser, to be able to be open to growth, including our minds, you know, being able to expand our inner world, pulling through those qualities, and then, you know, easily allowing them to flow into where we're going in the future. Because North Node in Gemini can get too bogged down in the detail and the instructions. So it's kind of really going to help facilitate in a positive way, in a really helpful, supportive, kind way, how that we can sort of find some balance point between these guys, which is what we're always trying to do with the nodes. We're trying to come back to the middle point here. It's not a case of this simple kind of black and white idea of South Node bad, North Node good kind of thing. It just doesn't work that way. You know, we're trying to integrate and move forward in light of the lessons that we've learned. You know, they were learned for a reason to help us, and we need to tap into the resources that we've learned, but not stay in that lesson. You know, that lesson's done now. We have new lessons now. So lots and lots to think about there, and Venus really supporting us to move in a more balanced and harmonious direction. So the weekend really is dominated then by, we're moving into the Scorpio new moon, as I mentioned at the start. So moon will have moved all the way around, and we'll be meeting up with the sun in the sign of Scorpio. So this is going to take place at 23 degrees of Scorpio. So find that in your chart. Which house of your chart does Scorpio occupy? And that is where we are being given a fresh blank page, okay? We won't see the moon in the sky. It's a completely blank canvas, all right? So we can plant new seeds of intention. And this is a really exciting new moon. And the reason for that is that there's a super harmonious aspect going on to Pluto and Jupiter. All right, so what we have then is we have an exact sextile to Jupiter. It's 23, actually they're the other way around by this point. They've swapped sides. So we've got Jupiter at 23 degrees of Capricorn, Earth sign Capricorn. And we have Pluto at 22 degrees. So it's an exact sextile with Jupiter and a ever so slightly just off sextile with Pluto. So what does that tell us? That tells us that this is a really, really, really wonderful opportunity to not only have a new start in this area of our life, but for that to be with greater wisdom, with greater opportunity for change. Pluto is the ruler of Scorpio. So for these guys to be making this harmonious aspect with their ruler, so Pluto is the ruler of Sun and Moon at this time because they're in Scorpio, which is ruled by Pluto. So the Pluto opportunity for change, for deep, deep change is really, really here. It's offering itself up to us. It's not going to fall in your lap if you don't do anything, because this is a sextile aspect. So this requires you to just meet it halfway, put in a bit of effort, say, do you know what, I really want to bring about a change. What might that change look like is, it's going to be informed by the full moon that took place in Taurus, as I mentioned at the beginning. And these signs are fixed. As I mentioned earlier, we have Taurus here, ruled by Venus. Okay, it speaks to our self-esteem. It speaks to our work ethic. It speaks to our resources, okay? How we accumulate our own resources, how we value our own resources, how we spend them. And it's our own sense of self-esteem and our own value system. And then Scorpio over here is, this is our very, very deeply ingrained stuff. This is where did they come from territory? Where did these values come from? So with the fixed signs, there's a resistance to change. They're fixed in their nature, so they don't easily adapt to change, all right? So we've got Aquarius, Leo, Taurus, and Scorpio. They're the fixed signs, and so they're just not comfortable with change. And that's the paradox of Scorpio energy, is that it's all about change, it's all about transformation, it's all about the death and rebirth regenerative process that we need to go through. But at the same time, it resists change through its fixed nature. And in doing so, it's like it builds up the need to change and provokes it into this volcano crisis experience that we get with Pluto. Pluto creates a crisis because it needs to bring about change, but as human beings, we resist that change so much. So this is about hunting out with Mercury and the two lights there, hunting out where do we have resistance to change within ourselves that needs to take place in order for us to be in more alignment with what our true values are. So I kind of encapsulated how to work with this new moon in the following sentence. So go deep and root out areas that are resistant to change, but are no longer in alignment with your core values and how you can live your life in a way that reflects greater love and nourishment on all levels. So, Taurus is about food. It's about what nourishes us. And that's not just in the literal sense. That's not just, what we put on our plate at the end of the day. It's what really is sustaining to us and sustaining us to be loving, kind, caring people, and to be people who have high self-worth and high self-esteem, because generally, when we have a higher self-esteem in ourselves, we recognize more of that in other people. We're more tuned into seeing what's good about someone rather than what's not so good about someone, because everyone else is mirroring our own relationship to ourselves. So if we're seeing like, oh my God, the whole world is just full of stupid people, it's an invitation for you to say, okay, what is it about me that I need to consider? What's underpinning that value system, really, that I just think nobody else is worth anything in my life. Where's that come from? And is that actually a reflection of a part of myself? So, you know, what's underlying the resistance to change that allows you to move into creating a life that's more aligned with your heart and what's your true core value system? And that's always changing. As we learn, as we grow, as we move through experiences of life, our values are always shifting and changing. I would hope. There's probably something not quite right if they're not. You know, change is something that we have to start being more accepting of. Like, it's okay to say, do you know what, that thing I said 5 years ago? Oh my God, like that's just not who I am anymore. That's fine. Or 5 minutes ago even, you know, if you've recognized that actually, I don't know where that came from, but that's not who I want to be going forward. That's fantastic, because that's being outside of this egoic, no, I'm going to defend myself to the nth degree, irrespective. It's like, well, we gain far more integrity and far more respect, which is a Saturn in Capricorn thing, far more respect when we conduct ourselves with integrity and we're big enough and we have enough courage. This is another part of the warrior work here with Mars retrograde in Aries. When I actually have the courage to be vulnerable enough and say, do you know what, I messed up? Or do you know what, actually, I think what I just said then was wrong, and I want to put that right. I think the world needs a whole lot more of that, rather than just jumping on everything that, you know, is wrong. Let's focus on, you know, improving things and making things better. So I'll just read that one more time to leave you with that. Go deep and root out areas that are resistant to change within you. This is deep, deep stuff, all right? Could even be subconscious. Just having the intention to want to find them may well be enough. To go deep and root out any areas that are resistant to change but are no longer in alignment with your core values, and living a life that reflects greater love and nourishment on all levels. I hope that is helpful. As I mentioned before, this is the last non-eclipse new moon that we're going to have whilst we're doing this Saturnian work on our foundations. Capricorn is our foundations. It's that solid platform. It's our integrity. It's our structure. And it's like our skeleton, really. And the whole of the rest of our life, you know, Saturn does rule the bones. The whole of the rest of our life has to hang off that skeleton, that formation, that structure, the core of us. And these are the very last moments. We've literally got until mid-December of Saturn here saying, let's master this stuff. Let's master our inner structure and make it something that's really solid and something that we can have great respect for. And that in turn will command respect from other people. So we can really do some work with this new moon. And then as we move into the eclipses, essentially the universe kind of takes over a bit with eclipses and says, well, you know what, I'm going to have more involvement here. So, you know, doing work with the eclipses, we tend to have a little bit less influence into the situation. So don't miss the opportunity for this one. This one will come to fruition. So the full moon of Scorpio will be on April the 27th, and we'll have, so by then the sun will have moved around. It takes 6 months. The sun will be over here in Taurus, and Venus and Mercury and Uranus will all be there too. There's quite a collection going on over there when this one comes to fruition point. Yeah, the moon will be in Scorpio at fullness. All right, so this is kind of the full moon where we will be reflected back to us how far we've gone with that process, the intentions that we're setting this weekend. So mark that date in your diary, and then you can plot your own progress, or get in touch with me and book a moon dialer reading, and we'll go through it together and make sure that you're really tapping into all the potential that this offers. I hope that's helpful for you. As always, if it is, give me a like, a love. Leave me a comment, tell me how you're getting on and how you're finding working with these energies, or any kind of feedback that you like, really. Give me a share, and don't forget to subscribe. Keep grounded. That Mars stuff is going to be really pretty potent, particularly Thursday, Friday time. So just, yeah, remember that integrity. Remember the legacy that this will leave. Do you want to look back on what you do on those days in 20 years' time and feel proud of yourself? That's the way to approach it. Anyway, bye for now. Lots of love.